Hey, and welcome back to the Sequence Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, and I got with us one of our amazing VIPs and influencers, RD, Registered Dietitian, Jamie Mills. She isn't one of our RDs that sees patients for us, but she is helping with education on social media for us and is an awesome advocate. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, she's very well known as the Sleeved Dietitian because she had a vertical sleeve gastrectomy, a type of bariatric surgery, and we'll go into that. And is also a registered dietitian, so talks about that nutrition from her lens, which is really really cool to see, and not that common. So tell us a little bit about your history, tell us about your struggles with weight if you can, and then
Mhm.
about the surgery and all that.
Oh gosh, yeah. So weight has been a struggle for me since as long as I can remember. I struggled with childhood obesity. So by the time I was like 9, 10, I was already over 200 pounds, which was really wild because my sister, who was 4 years younger than me, we grew up in the same house, same parents, ate the same food. She never struggled. Um, but no matter what, I seemed to always put weight on. And unfortunately, dieting and trying to lose weight was even a part of my childhood because of this. But it wasn't until I was 14 that we started to understand why. So at 14, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was actually very fortunate to get diagnosed as young as I did because I know so many people go so long without a diagnosis. But I got diagnosed with PCOS and insulin resistance, so it started to make sense why I struggled the way I did. Um, but getting that diagnosis didn't exactly help me either, especially back then when I got the diagnosis. It was kind of a here, go on metformin and good luck was
Mm-hmm.
really the answer at that time. And my, naive young brain just felt defeated. I already felt super different from my peers. I was, incredibly overweight, um, and just really, I just felt so different, and I felt defeated. I felt like, well, it doesn't matter if I try and lose weight. I've been trying my whole life. It's not going to work. I have this issue, so why bother?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had that defiant mentality for a while until I got to college, and I was about 20 years old or so, and I was struggling to walk across campus, and getting up the stairs to, the top floor to go to class was horrible. I was always like huffing and puffing and just not happy, miserable. I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel like I wanted to go out or socialize. So it felt very isolating. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I either have to, even if my mentality at this point was honestly, even if I never lose a pound, I have to at least try because I can't keep gaining. Um, Sorry, my dog is crying. I don't know if you can hear her.
Yeah, it's okay.
She may interrupt us. Um, so I started to implement some healthy habits at the time, or what I thought was healthy, because at this time I actually wasn't going to school to be a dietitian. I was majoring in English and minoring in art, of all things. And I started to, consistently go to the gym and eat smaller portions. And over the course of a year, I lost about 70 pounds or so. But what started off as really healthful habits very quickly turned to very disordered and restrictive habits,
Mm.
where I simply was not eating anywhere near enough. And it became incredibly disordered, and I ended up seeking out help and therapy for that. And it was around that time I decided to change. Once I started to get better, I decided to kind of change career paths, and I wanted to help other people get healthy, lose weight, but avoid that downward spiral that I had gone on. So that's when I changed my major, decided to go to school to be a dietitian. And throughout, my it was funny. I was ahead of head in school, and I was about to graduate early when I was studying English, and then I completely set myself back by starting
Ah.
100% over. It was well worth it. But during my undergrad, going to school to be a dietitian is when I started to gain all the weight back, because my methods of getting there was so restrictive that once I started to actually be healthy and actually implement all the things that I was learning, I gained it all back and then some, which you and I both know is incredibly common when someone struggles with lifelong obesity. And it got to the point, I was in my dietetic internship, which is like our last year of school and like the most intense year. And I finally kind of threw my hands up. I'm like, you know what? This is beyond me. I have been trying my whole life, and I have lost weight before, and wasn't healthy and it didn't work, and I'm doing all the healthy things. I'm even helping other people be healthy now. I need another tool. And I was very resistant to weight loss surgery. I'm the first to say, before I had decided that it was right for me, I was one of those people who kind of judged too. I was like, well, if you did what you were supposed to, you wouldn't need surgery. Obviously, we've come a long way since then, but
Yeah.
I felt very conflicted about having it. I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like, how am I supposed to be a dietitian helping other people? Meanwhile, I can't get my own ish together. Like, I was like, who's going to take me seriously as a dietitian if I can't help myself? I had all these limiting beliefs, but I knew at the end of the day, I wasn't healthy, and I was only 24 and I was just struggling so hard. So I ended up having the vertical sleeve gastrectomy, which I can honestly just say was the best thing I ever did for my entire life. Um, it was absolutely incredible. It was scary,
And when
very
was
scary.
this?
This was in 2017, December 2017. And at that
Okay.
time, I had never met another bariatric patient in my life.
Mm.
So again, just incredibly isolating. I didn't know anyone who had gone through it. I was incredibly scared. And I just had this feeling of like, I feel like some kind of failure who couldn't do this. But that's why I help other people now, because I don't want them to feel that way or have that experience, because it truly is the gold standard for overcoming lifelong obesity. And
Mm-hmm.
it's come with its own set of challenges, and by no means has surgery been easy in any way. It's been incredibly hard. I think the biggest thing is people don't realize that you are committed to your diet or your routine for life. Once you have surgery, it's no longer an option, and if it does become an option, that's when you will, struggle again or have really negative outcomes. But there's been ups and downs even with my weight since surgery. It's still not it's helped tremendously, but it's not. I think we're still just trying to find that ultimate solution, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for anybody listening, there are a few different bariatric surgeries, and they've changed over the years a little bit, and what's kind of come and gone. One of them is called the lap band, which I don't think is used very often anymore. They put a little band around your stomach to make like a little pouch, but nothing's actually changed about your anatomy. It's literally an external band within your body, but around your stomach. And yeah, I've actually just anecdotally, the data's not great on it, but also anecdotally, I've not seen a lot of success with that, other than once in a while somebody responds very well, but most of the time it doesn't do as well. Then there's this vertical sleeve gastrectomy, where they basically take the size of your stomach and turn it into the size of almost like a small banana. They cut out a large portion of it, but it still kind of goes in that same curve. It's not a small little pouch, but it is smaller. It may have some hormonal benefit due to there's something called ghrelin made from your stomach, and they think that maybe that helps out because it lowers the ghrelin. Ghrelin's one of these hormones that may increase hunger. Then there's something called a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, where they make your stomach into a small pouch, and then they rearrange your intestines a little bit. Sounds crazy, and this is where some people get scared, but because of the way they do it, may have some hormonal benefit by the nutrients get to a different part of your intestines at a sooner time, which may help release certain endogenous hormones that are related to satiety. And then there's some newer techniques coming out that seem pretty interesting and pretty promising. But so what Jamie had was the vertical sleeve gastrectomy. And how much weight, if you don't mind me
Yeah.
asking?
So from my highest to my previous lowest from surgery, I got down about 112 pounds.
Okay. And so somewhere, was it around like 30% of your total body weight?
I don't know the total body weight, but I know I was right around the 70% mark for excess body
Okay,
weight.
yeah, so they usually cut it in half. So yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good response. So when we're looking
Hmm.
at like weight loss medicines, we talk about Saxenda, liraglutide, the once a day injection, it's somewhere around 6 to 7% total body weight loss on average. Contrave, bupropion, and naltrexone combination, somewhere around 5 to 6%. Qsymia, which is phentermine topiramate, which we don't prescribe at Sequence because it's a controlled medicine, the phentermine component, but that's around 10 to 11%. the semaglutide or Wegovy, the high dose 2.4 is around 15%. Tirzepatide is around 21%. So surgery is more around 30%, but can be higher depending on some of these newer techniques. And the data, people are always like, this is scary because it's very dangerous and they're cutting you up. We have what are called centers of excellence now. They have standards that they follow, and it's extremely safe. In these long-term trials, it likely reduces mortality, risk of death from certain things, and overall death. It's something that people used to think this is crazy for people to do, but now we think we're pretty sure it's saving people's lives, and obviously quality of life is important too. So just a quick little recap. Of course, I think we're going to have one of my bariatric surgeon friends who actually does the surgeries all day. In residency, I used to go and help them out and move the camera around so they could see what's going on. You don't want me cutting you up. I'll sew your elbow to your face maybe, but no, I'm just kidding. Not that bad. It just won't look pretty. So anyway,
you won't get that 30% if you're the one stitching us up.
Yeah, you might get more, but you won't like it. So anyway, so Jamie had the vertical sleeve gastrectomy, and clearly it was very beneficial. Okay, so fast forward to now. How your journey through that was good, and you appreciated that surgery.
Oh my God, so good. It was the first time in my life where I felt like I actually had control over the outcomes. So I had tried to lose weight my entire life, diet after diet, or, I've seen multiple dietitians, in my childhood and adolescence, and it never, I felt like I was always just white knuckling it and so either hungry or deprived, or it was so hard just to lose a couple pounds, and that if there was even any flexibility, shoot right back up. So this was the first time where I was consistently losing weight in a way that didn't feel like I wasn't like white knuckling it, and it wasn't that I wasn't trying hard, it just wasn't so strenuous that you couldn't continue. So it really gave me what I felt like was control over my life for the first time. It was a lot of planning, especially as in my dietetic internship doing all my clinical rotations. I had to really pack my protein and my vitamins, which are always still just right here on my desk,
Nice.
Make sure that I have my water, so some of those habits of always having your water, always having your vitamins, always packing your protein. That was something that I really took very seriously. And here I am 5 years later, and it's still part of my routine. And this is where I try and explain to people, yes, there is a very restrictive post-op diet for that first year or so. Really, the first year you got to be real diligent, but as time goes on and you can eat more, it really does just become a part of your lifestyle, and you are able to add more foods in. It's not that you are on this crazy restrictive diet forever, but time and place, as time goes on and you have distanced yourself from some of those emotional eating habits and really have learned new skills, you can have a completely normal, balanced life. So it was wonderful. I did stop losing weight around 9 months, despite being consistent for years beyond that. I'm over 5 years post-op from BSG at this point. And I was totally okay once I had stopped losing, and I kind of maintained in like a 7-ish pound range or so. But around almost year 3 post-op, for what felt like no reason at all, because I was doing all the things, sticking to the protein, sticking to my habits, working out. Working out has become a huge part of my life. I ended up joining CrossFit, and I do it because I love it, not even for it's more for the emotional and mental benefits at this point than anything else. But it didn't quite make sense why the scale was trickling up. I did have some changes in medication, some changes in birth control, and I felt like with that, suddenly, what felt like overnight, I had put 15 pounds back on after maintaining within that few pound range for almost 2 years. 15 pounds came back on within a month's time of changing that birth control. And I felt like my PCOS symptoms were definitely more apparent because they had gotten so much better since having surgery. And from then on, for the next year and a half, I just felt like I was white knuckling it again. I'm like, what is happening? And just trying so hard to keep the weight off. And it wasn't that my habits had slipped up or I had done anything wrong. I don't have an exact answer, but I do know that the weight was trickling up again. And that was really really scary.
Yeah, despite your best efforts. So
Yes.
that so
Yes.
that brought you to me and us.
Yes. So in last June 2022, me and one of my dietitians, we flew down to Texas for the ASMBS meeting, the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, which was really cool to be there with all sorts of dietitians and surgeons and nurse practitioners and to sit in on those panels. And there was a whole panel about weight loss medications, specifically GLP-1 medications, in conjunction with bariatric surgery. And this was the first I had heard of the GLP-1s because a lot of people in the PCOS community online have talked about them for a while, but I really got to learn about them from the lens of bariatric surgeons and bariatric dietitians. And one of the things that really struck me was one of the speakers, she was a dietitian, she said, "What do you do when your patient comes to you and they have regain?" She goes, "Not if they have regain, when." She goes, "Because everyone after surgery is going to gain a bit back. Now, statistically, we don't want to regain all of it, but most people just do not stay at their lowest." And when I looked at, I had regained about 25 to 28 pounds total from that 112-pound loss, which statistically looking at that, still pretty good in
Still
the grand scheme.
very successful.
Yes, yes. So, but for me, I was sitting there during that panel and I was like, I work with bariatric patients now, and the amount of people I have seen who unfortunately have gone through what I've gone through and continue to trend up, I was like, I don't want to be a sitting duck and wait until it is 50 pounds, especially if I'm trying. Listen, I'm the first to admit when I F up or when I'm not being on point with what I need to do. And I even have worked with my own dietitians throughout the years. And I went to one of my dietitians when I was going through all of this, and she's like, "I don't even know what to give you for pointers." I was like, okay, this is at least validating that I am doing everything that I'm supposed to. And when I was sitting there during that panel learning about the effectiveness of the GLP-1s and the effectiveness of them in conjunction with weight loss surgery is when I started kind of getting my wheels turning, because it was only like a couple weeks after that I reached out to you, because I'm like, you know what? Again, I felt like I was faced with that very same frustration that I faced going into surgery of like, why can't I just do it without this tool, or why won't it work? And it was the first time since my surgery I really felt that way again, and kind of that shame. I was like, am I really going to go, like, after all of this, after weight loss surgery and losing all this weight and supporting so many other people, and then looking to me as an example, I'm going to go on a weight loss medication? But I had to have that honest conversation with myself of obesity is a disease, and if you are struggling, let's stop. For me, it was even more like, yes, I was regaining a little bit, but it was more so to be preventative. I was like, I don't want to wake up a year from now or 2 years from now and be back at my highest weight. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen many times. So for me, I'm like, I think having another tool makes sense. And hearing the science behind it, hearing about the outcomes of other patients on them, it just made sense to me.
Yeah. Thanks for all that. I mean, so what you're describing is this biology of why it's so hard. I mean, we've had a few other awesome patients on here describe their experience, not with surgery plus the medicine, but what you're describing, that very strong biological driver, despite your best efforts. And even so, and you're a dietitian and you have, your surrounding, you're making your surrounding as good as possible. You're trying to eat the right types of foods. And despite that, those drivers are so strong, which I would say it's mostly coming from the brain, and not the mind, like psychologically, but biologically from the brain.
Yeah.
That drivers to was it like an insatiable type of appetite? Like what did you feel? Did anything specifically?
No, not even. I felt like, because, as far as my surgery goes, I still have really good like restriction. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, I still eat about a 3/4 of a cup of food at a time. And it's always protein first, or for the most part. And it wasn't even like an insatiable hunger. I think I was maybe hungrier more often. But
Mm-hmm.
again, I was like, this is normal. I'm further up from surgery and I am doing CrossFit 5 days a week. I should be fueling more. I shouldn't
Right.
be, and I tell my own clients this: eating 800 calories a day for life is not sustainable. Your calories
No.
do need to increase over time. But this is my own theory, and you can give me your thoughts on it. But I also think, because the first year to two after weight loss surgery, most people are in that incredibly low calorie range. But over time, again, like I said, you add more foods in, you get back up. But I really think just metabolically things shift and get messed up a bit when you are eating, if you're eating 800 to 1,000 calories a day for a year and then slowly eat more, even if you're eating 1,200 calories, which would be a decent deficit for most people, it's still more than you were previously eating. So it's that much harder, I think, after weight loss surgery for people to get back into a deficit where they're able to actually lose. So one of the things I had worked on, my PCP is actually certified in obesity, and she's really great. And her and I had talked about trying to strategically increase calories so then I could drop them again. So I was working on eating more slowly over time to then drop them again. But when that happened and I dropped them again, I didn't lose anything. So I wish I had a really good scientific answer for why all of this is, but I don't know.
Yeah. So, and you got relief from the GLP-1. So a lot of the science has to do with like, it's just the body's fighting hard against you. And some
I
people,
felt that. I felt like my body was fighting me tooth and nail. It was so frustrating because I felt like I was back in that place I was before surgery, where no matter what,
hmm
it just felt like a fight.
and now, yeah. So some people, it's like, well, gosh, you had surgery. Why do you need a medicine? But this is, we have a significant portion of patients who have had some sort of bariatric surgery, whether it's a sleeve or Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Not as many lap bands, but a few of them are in there. And they come to us because eventually the biology and the appetite and those drivers come back. And that's where the medicine hits these receptors in the brain, as we've discussed on some of the different podcasts in the past, and it gives that relief. So you started in June or July with the GLP-1 medicine.
I think it was like the first week of August. I think I reached out to you in like July, and then it was like
Okay.
the first week of August.
Yep.
Yeah, beginning of August.
And what did you notice? Like you said, you.
Oh gosh. So I noticed immediately. So I took the first, like injection, and it was the next morning. I took it like at night the next morning. Before I went to CrossFit, I like to have these little like oat squares. They're pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to just have a little bit of that before I go and work out. And I usually have two of them. I
Mm-hmm.
ate one, and I went to eat the second one like I do every morning, and I was like, oh, I can't eat that. And I'm like, wait, what? Like it was very weird. And what's been so weird for me, so the thing with surgery is you get full because you feel this sense of restriction. So when I get
Mm-hmm.
full, I don't necessarily feel it in my stomach. I feel it almost like in my chest or my esophagus, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm restricted. I don't have any more room. I'm done. What's been so odd to me, and that's why bariatric surgery, really works for people in terms of portions. What's so strange to me is since being on the GLP-1, not once have I been tempted to push that restriction because I want to keep eating,
Mm-hmm.
but two, because it's still hard to be like, oh, well, I want more. That doesn't happen anymore. But two, I stop eating far before I feel the restriction physically. It's like my head is done before my body is, and that's very odd, like very, very odd. So in that first morning, I was like, no, like this is like some kind of placebo. There's no way this is actually working. Like this is my like, but it was like it
Yep.
felt like it, I was like, this is weird. Um, and since then, I have not been tempted to eat beyond my fullness, like not even once. And what's been so eye-opening to me is I didn't think I was insanely hungry or insatiable before, but being on these medications, it almost makes me a little bit sad because all I can think is if this is what people who don't struggle with their weight feel like or think about food, no wonder they don't struggle. And I feel like being on these medications kind of levels the playing field for those of us who do struggle because it's not simply just eat less. It's the way your body actually is thinking about food, and what it's done for me is it's silenced every thought around food, and it's made food completely neutral. So before, especially when I was struggling with that bit of regain, it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to eat this. I'm going to make sure that I eat this today. And okay, well, I ate that, 2 hours ago. I'm going to hold off a little bit because, just trying to manage everything. Those like racing food thoughts of even just trying to stay diligent with things are gone. I only think about food at all when I'm genuinely hungry. And when I'm genuinely hungry, I just go eat something. And it's so simple now. And I know that sounds crazy because other people are probably like, well, yeah, that's what you do. But when you have all of these like thoughts and interferences with that thought process, that's not the way it was. And it didn't occur to me that people felt this way about food. Like it's so strange. Like for example, a couple weeks ago, my husband has a huge sweet tooth. He got some like Oreos, and I was like, okay, I'll have a couple. So I portioned out three of them. I ate two, and I just didn't want the third, so I just threw it away. Which I know like that might not be mind blowing for some people, but like I clearly had like I had room in my stomach for that extra cookie.
Mm-hmm.
I just genuinely was so satisfied and didn't care and didn't want it. It didn't matter. And it's wild to me that that's how other people have always thought about food. So food is no longer triggering. There's no longer foods that I feel I need to emotionally lean on or avoid. And it's, if anything, being on it has significantly helped my relationship with food because I don't feel like and I think as a dietitian, knowing the nutrient content of everything, like I definitely was overthinking all my choices. I feel like I just eat what sounds good and prioritize protein and move on with my life. Like I feel, and I know you've used this term before, but I feel like normal. And it's
Yeah.
very, very weird. And it's been the most freeing thing because even after weight loss surgery, this mindset piece that just like I feel like this medication has just changed my brain. And this did not happen after weight loss surgery. I had other beautiful benefits from weight loss surgery, like I shared. But this is why we always say in the bariatric community, you have surgery on your stomach, not your brain. Like you have to fix your mindset, which you do. I still think working with therapists and dietitians and working on the habits is essential no matter what tools you use. But I feel like this is the part that has fixed the brain piece. And I feel like it was like the last piece of the puzzle for me to get the treatment plan essentially that I needed. So it's been like, I never imagined that these benefits would come from a medication. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it better in your words than I could ever explain it, but what you're describing is what normal physiology should be like, what people that don't struggle with their weight, that's never struggled with their weight, despite eating whatever they want and doing whatever they want, physical activity wise, they just go through life and they eat, they may eat burgers and french fries and pizzas or whatever, but their body regulates in a way to where their energy balance in their system works out for them. That may mean they, yeah,
And
go
like I
ahead.
said, it makes me a little sad. Like I think about 8, 9-year-old Jamie who was trying so like at 8 years old you shouldn't be worried about not eating too much, but I
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And things were different back then, but like I can remember like my pediatrician, he would literally like yell at my mom in front of me, like, why are you letting her gain so much weight? Like would get
Mm,
mad at my mom. And
uh,
my mom's like, I don't know what, like she didn't want to put me on a diet. I was a child. So when I
uh,
think of, and as a kid, I didn't have those regulators. So like I could just keep eating and never feel full. And that was something I didn't really mention before, but before surgery, I never understood what fullness really was. And it really blew my mind how people would have a meal and not finish it. So like like my husband, for example, he's never struggled with his weight. And I remember when we started dating, this was before my weight loss surgery, like we would go to dinner and he would have literally like 2 bites of food left on his plate. And I'm like, you can finish it. He's like, yeah, but I don't want it. That like blew my mind because that made no sense to me.
yeah.
So like I genuinely just did not have the same regulatory systems that other people did is how I really feel like looking back on it as a kid. Because again, I was with all my peers who probably ate far worse things than my mom was really on it too. Like she didn't buy a lot of the fun foods in the 90s and all those things because she knew like I was struggling. But I didn't get to just have that freedom as a kid or an adolescent. Like I was always worried about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible descriptor of it all. That should be what most people feel, but unfortunately, it's actually really common. What you went through is not uncommon anymore, and it's
Hmm.
due to our
Right.
environments and genetics and all sorts of stuff like
Yeah.
that. I'm glad you have relief now. I mean, what you described is the fullness comes from, the stretching of the stomach. What you described as not having to eat a little bit more and before you even feel full, and fullness is different than satiation. You can feel full like from eating a ton of salad in bulk,
Yes.
but then all of a sudden you're like, I just need to eat more, but I'm going to throw up because like I'm so full, but I'm not satiated.
And
And so
that's
that's,
kind of
yeah,
what was surgery was like. So surgery was like that a lot, especially in the beginning months when like you're so restricted. It's like I am full and I physically like will be very sick if I eat more, but not satisfied.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
this definitely has brought in satisfaction in ways I didn't know you could be satisfied, I guess.
Yeah,
It sounds bizarre to say it out loud, but
yeah.
it's like this is another side of like it never occurred to me that eating or experiences around food could feel this way. And if anything, as a bariatric patient, my biggest concern has been making sure that I am eating enough, especially in terms of protein. So I have gone back to some of those bariatric basics where I am putting like a protein shake in my coffee in the morning just to make sure, because it's super important to me that I'm not losing muscle mass, especially because I have goals at the gym. And I've been getting on the in-body scan every couple of weeks since we started this, and I have not lost much muscle overall, which makes me
That's
very, very
awesome.
proud. The last in-body I got on was 2 weeks ago, and I was down 5 pounds from the previous one, and less than half a pound of that was muscle. The rest was fat mass. So I'm like,
Yeah,
okay. And that's
that's
because I don't want to. So it's my biggest concern as a dietitian in the bariatric community, especially giving the education, not just as a patient, but as a professional, is I know how easy it is as a bariatric patient to unintentionally severely undereat on these medications in conjunction with surgery. So just really encouraging people to get that protein in or kind of go back to those basics of on a schedule, drinking a shake or having something extra just to make sure you're not missing those, nutritional needs.
very good. All right. Well, thanks you for sharing your story. For those listening, here's the gist. If you have had bariatric surgery in the past and you're starting to struggle with keeping the weight off, again, most people are going to regain at least a little bit of their weight. That's just how
Yes.
things work. Now, there are extra tools, and we specialize in this type of thing, in this combination at Sequence. There is relief from a hormonal aspect using a GLP-1 medicine. There are other medicines that I have used, but in general, my go-to is the GLP-1 because it hits that hormonal component so well. And, there's going to be more and more studies on this, but honestly, I think the future is not using one or the other. It's using a combination if needed. I have some patients that have gone and used medicines and then it said, you know what, I think I need to get surgery. And some get surgery and then continue the medicines or stop the medicines and then start the medicines later or may not need medicines later. It really depends on the person. And this is where individualization is key.
Mhm.
So thank you, Jamie, for coming and telling your story. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know?
Um, One of the questions that I get asked a lot from people who are either just considering surgery or newly post-op is, they're seeing a lot of other people's journeys going on medications. Is they're scared of, should I even bother with surgery? Is surgery even worth it if I'm going to need this medication anyways? And I think again, individualized care is essential. And the way I like to describe it is not everyone is going to need a medication by any
Mm-hmm.
means. So bariatric surgery is the gold standard as of right now. Your surgical team is only going to do what's in your best interest. And I like to think of it as how beautiful is it that we have an extra tool now, that
Yeah,
bariatric surgery is no longer the end of the rope. So that if you have surgery and in the event you do need another tool like I did, it's okay. It's also not shameful to get another tool down the road if it's what you need. So I tell people like take it one step at a time, don't overthink it. And should you need extra support, it's here now, and that's great.
perfect. Yeah, I love that. Neither tool is shameful. Some people may need one or the other or both, and you just won't know until you go through the experience yourself.
Yeah, 100%. So
Well, thank you for coming on, Jamie. For
thank
anybody
you.
that wants to follow Jamie, she's the Sleeved Dietitian. You can look her up on the Instagram.
Thank you.
Thank you.